Welcome to the REI Agent, a holistic approach to life through real estate. I'm Mattias, an agent and investor.
And I'm Erica, a licensed therapist.
Join us as we interview guests that also strive to live bold and fulfilled lives through business and real estate investing.
Tune in every week for interviews with real estate agents and investors.
Ready to level up?
Let's do it.
Oh, the weather outside is spooky. Welcome back to the REI Agent. It is Halloween.
And it's going to be 79 degrees today where we are.
Yeah, spooky. But we have I think two Taylor Swifts today, dressed up as Taylor Swift. One was a Taylor Swift mermaid princess. But I think now she's just Taylor Swift, right?
Yes. Said she may be a gymnast later, but the outfit doesn't change.
Yeah, it's a leotard. And then we have Mickey Mouse, our little guy, little dude, 2-year-old is Mickey Mouse. He was a cow the last time we dressed up. And we also have a turtle outfit for him. We'll see if the turtle outfit makes it. I think he's kind of attached to the Mickey Mouse now that we got him in it.
Yeah, well, it's costume day at school at his pre-K, and he's been wearing it all day. So I would be shocked if we could get that back off of him.
Yeah, I was surprised when we got it for him that he chose the cow outfit at one point instead of Mickey Mouse, since Mickey Mouse is his favorite thing. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we're looking forward to walking around our neighborhood and not being cold this year. And maybe, should we bring the speaker along again?
Yeah.
Play some fun music. We get the soundboard out and have things like
Eras tour,
hype horn. Halloween is fun. I know there's a lot of concern with parents and candy around this time. They did a Trunkoween, was it? Trunkoween? Trunk or treat?
Trunk or treat.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's not trunk or
all right, we'll edit that part out. Not. We had one of those yesterday, and we got a lot of candy, and then I had bedtime. You had bedtime tonight. I had bedtime yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're just starting. We're going to have so much candy, and they're going to be high emotions. What's what usually happens? High emotions, a lot of fighting with each other.
I think it impacts our oldest the most.
Yeah.
Her body shows a visible change after sugar.
Really does.
Because sometimes I think it makes it worse if we call it out and we're like, oh, you've had sugar. Who gave you sugar? Looking at you.
Yeah, sorry.
And
I'm not the trained therapist, if you haven't noticed.
But I do think, even without anybody saying that, I think she does show just like spastic energy that comes out after she has candy. The younger two, I really don't see much of a difference.
We were maybe just tired, but there was some whininess, some big emotions coming forth. But I think that you have always been a proponent for, especially on Halloween, that the kids can kind of just listen to their bodies and eat as much as they want. Is that true?
Yeah. I've thought about it as in, all right, look, as a parent, I get to decide, but really I guess, get to decide how many events or opportunities to get candy that they're exposed to. Because there are, if we wanted to, we could go to 10 trunk or treats plus Halloween. They get candy at school. They got candy from family last night. And so there's just so many opportunities. So we get to control how many of those they're exposed to. So we chose one trunk or treat and then Halloween tonight. And then beyond that, we've talked about making sure that they have a really good dinner and that they drink some water so they're not just eating candy on an empty stomach. And then once they have done those two things, then tonight, I'm not going to comment on how much candy they're eating. I'm not going to regulate it. I'm not going to comment like, oh, you've already had 3. All I tell them is if your belly is hurting, you've had too much, it's your body telling you that it's time, way past time to stop. And so you want to stop before your belly hurts. Trying to help them be more in tune with how their body's feeling. And
I remember the times where like, I think Isla was kind of like, I think my body wants another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's starting them. Yeah. Like even if they have no idea, and they just want more candy, it's starting to them to think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And last night, actually, our oldest only had 2 pieces. And it was the same. I said, after dinner and after you have water, your candy's up, your candy is yours. And she had 2 pieces. She said she wanted to save the rest of it for tonight. So we'll see what happens tonight. But, and then, after tonight, the candy's not just on the counter either. We're going to put it away out of sight. And then once we decide to bring it back out again, it's going to be the same thing. Just here's the candy, enjoy it. But it's not, it's not going to be like laying out around the house all the time either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can see how it is, I think probably counterintuitive to a lot of people, to kind of give free rein, because we also understand the horrors of sugar to children. But yeah, and they have eaten too much candy. It's not like that we've done this and they, have perfectly regulated themselves, right? I mean, they have eaten too much.
No, it's been a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
When we first started it, they would eat until their bellies hurt, and then they would go to bed complaining about it. But I mean, it was a nice opportunity to talk about, well, that's your body telling you that it's too full and it has too much of one thing, and you have to make sure you give it time and space, and you feed yourself with other food.
And so it's a bigger picture thing, right? It's the learning how to be in tune with your body. Yeah. So I think it's really cool. I can't say that I have any part in this wisdom, and I don't think I would have come up with that on my own, but I do really appreciate you doing that with them, and how I can get, see the results in the future for them on that.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day about, like us modeling that for them too, because I want them to be able to see me eating dessert and not always think that I'm eating salad, because that's not the case. I do like salad, but I don't always eat it. But so
there are 2 times a year you have dessert.
I used to be like a super sweets person, and I really liked it. But in recent years, I don't a whole lot. There's not a lot of sweets that make me feel good. Yeah. And ice cream is one of those things that doesn't always make me feel great. But I took Isla to the jump park this week, and we got ice cream afterwards. I was like, I don't want her to grow up thinking like my mom got me ice cream, but my mom never ate ice cream. And so then, that's not okay for me to do as an adult or something.
Right.
So I ended up getting ice cream, and I paid for it later. So in some ways I'm modeling like what I'm teaching. In some ways I'm not.
Yeah. And I'm joking about the 2 times a year you eating desserts, if that's not obvious, but
yeah.
I think they definitely get a better, role model with their food relationships with you than they do with me. Although I'm getting better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what would you have done if I wasn't around?
With candy?
With the Halloween candy.
Pretended Halloween was for devil worshippers, and told them they're not allowed to have any candy. Go. You are not allowed, Cap. I don't know. I don't really know what I would do. I might have limited it. Say they could have this many pieces, been a little bit more generous on Halloween. That I could see that being a logical thought. But yeah, there would probably been more of the, oh gosh, they're nightmares on candy in my head than really focusing on their relationship with food and how, they can have a relationship with candy and things that are junk food, and not be unhealthy about it. They can have that on occasion, and it's a good learning experience. I just don't think I would have really had the tools and the wherewithal to think through all that.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have either growing up, but
that's why you marry up, folks.
I will say, I guess the caveat to this is our 3 kids are not on any dietary restrictions. And they're, for the most part, pretty healthy. And so there isn't a medical reason for us to restrict the candy, which if that's the case, and we do have friends and with their family where this would not be helpful because their kids have different needs. So
yeah, no, that's a good point. It's a good point. So to pivot, the other thing that's happening right now is the election. Did you want to get into that?
Well,
who are you voting for?
Only to say that sometimes themes come up in the community in my work, and the election anxiety is one of them. And just that, this feeling that something is happening next week that's big, that nobody or anyone I've talked to really feels like they have any control over.
Yeah.
And how difficult that can feel to deal with when you don't feel like you can really do anything about it, but it's coming, regardless of how, or, whoever becomes the next president.
Yeah. And is that also like correlated with an intense like focus on like the news and all the, we're getting bombarded left and right about, the process, the candidates, and et cetera. Is that, you think that's like comes along with that? Like, we don't have any control and it's such a huge thing. That's why I'm so anxious about it.
Well, I guess I've seen the opposite. Actually, most people have said, I recognize that the news pulls me in a negative way and it makes the anxiety worse. So knowing that, I'm not turning that on, and I'm going to focus on more what I'm presently doing in my life and the things that I can enjoy and be grateful for and control, which is a really healthy response.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I guess also I think that in my voting history, no matter which way it turns out, if it turned out the way I voted or it turned out not the way I voted, I think it kind of normalizes after, even if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that person got elected. It kind of normalizes after a month?
Yeah, where you adjust to it. It becomes less of a shock.
Yeah, like it's just, you kind of go back to your day to day, and maybe that's a helpful reminder too, to, and I'm not diminishing the importance of focusing on the issues and doing your active duty of voting, go vote. But at the end of the day, like that's all you have control over. And if you realize that this too will pass and you'll be back to kind of your day-to-day normal, and that everything around us is just kind of hyping up our it is so geared to divide us that it's just making you so, it's kind of like war, where they propaganda people into believing the people that we're going to war against are the enemy, and they're so evil and they're so horrible people, right? Like that's kind of what they do. And I feel like that's what happens with our elections, and it's effective because people are most of the time voting against somebody, not voting for somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, just a thing that we should recognize and realize how much, control we have over it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a friend of mine who attended a webinar about how to handle election anxiety, specifically with clients. And she said she left it having election anxiety. That was not super effective.
Yeah. Practice on oneself.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, it's a big week. There's a lot of sugar flying around this week, and then a lot of stress flying around next week, and it's all going to be fine. We're going to have like a buffer week after a buffer week or two. And then we get into the family crisis of Thanksgiving.
This is your busy season?
It is. Do you hear? There's a therapist recently that was joking that we can't go on holiday from about now until January or February.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like opposite of our hot seasons are kind of opposite.
Yep. Family makes us crazy.
And you don't want to move when you're dealing with that, I guess.
That's probably true. You're in crisis.
Anyway,
you decide to move in the spring when you're like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, we got through it. Now let's leave. Never again. Yeah, well, let's get into our guest, James Shelby. James is coming out of California. James is a top producing agent, team lead, and he has been in the business for 11 years. He was great to talk to. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything more to say other than enjoy James Shelby. Welcome back to the REI Agent. We are so pleased to have James Shelby here with us, coming out of the California area, not San Diego, despite what your hat says.
Close.
Yeah, but you are a big Padres fan, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a tough run, but keep the faith, as we like to say.
Yeah, that's something that I have never. I don't know the pain of. My father was a huge Phillies fan, and has gone through the ringer with that many times. I've never really got into sports until recently when we started watching we started doing fantasy football. She got me into fantasy football. I hadn't really watched any sports, and then now I'm just like cheering for up and coming teams. And like, I'm not even like, I don't have like a loyal like one team that I follow, which I don't know if it's good or bad.
Well, you also have like 4 fantasy teams, or you did last year.
I did last year.
That's a lot to manage.
It's too much.
How far did the Padres make it?
So the Dodgers that just won the World Series, we lost to the Dodgers the round before, I think. Wait, now I can't even remember. So we made it. Was in the wild card, beat them, beat the Braves. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I'm just still getting calls. So I don't know what's going on.
It's the life of a realtor, right?
Yeah, I can't get away. But I think I go back and forth with sports. So I was a big Cowboys fan, or I still am, but my entire life, big Cowboys fan. Football was my first and only love for probably 30 years. And then I would say, and that was full of heartbreak. So
yeah,
that hasn't been much better. They won a Super Bowl when I was like 8, and it's been, mediocrity since then. I think my philosophy on sports has changed through the years, especially since I really got more into business and personal development. I've been an agent for 11 years, and I just have come to realize, like, I really do love sports, and I love watching games and going to games and following the teams. But at the end of the day, they don't pay my bills.
Right.
Quite the contrary, I help pay theirs. And, as much as I'm sure a lot of the players enjoy the fans and this and that, they're not losing sleep over us. So my philosophy has changed a little bit. It's more just enjoyment, and, I get heartbroken when my teams lose, but it lasts, 24 hours and that's it. Whereas before, maybe I was crushed for a week or two, There's more important things in life. It's more just entertainment to me at this point. And I see it now more for what it truly is, which is just a big business conglomerate, and so I think that's probably changed through the years too. I think maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it was more of a hometown thing, and where you grew up, and there was a lot of the players stayed on the same team their whole career, and it was a lot of that. Now it's just a big business, and you just kind of take it for what it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna dance a dangerous line here and do a parallel here to politics, but I think that I think maybe a bit of my opinion on why I am fine with my level of involvement with sports is because I really have no control over it, right? Like there's I can't really make a difference in who wins and it's kind of similar to politics. You can vote, but that's about it. And this time of the year, you see everybody like, getting so riled up and like their whole world is like, going to end if it doesn't go the way they want it to. And just kind of if I can focus on things I have control over in my life for the most part and really invest in those things. And then, do the things that you want to, like go watch the game, go vote, whatever. But it just, I feel like I'm going to be a happier person if I'm not like, totally invested in it. Like, spending weeks being, that's not fun, right?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. When it comes to politics, I think your local politics is probably a little more important than the big picture. I think we found that out during COVID that, if you lived in one state, they treated it this way. If you lived in another state, they treated it this way. And then even if you just niche it down to counties, I'm in California, but I live in Riverside County, and Riverside County is a little bit more of a red county for California, which is kind of, people don't realize that a lot of California is very Republican, but it's just, you've got the big cities that are more Democrat. So, I'm outside in a suburb here, and, our sheriff, for example, is, the sheriff of Riverside County is a Republican, and he kind of governed things locally how you would expect a Republican to do it. So I don't know. Politics is one of those things where I think I've probably paid the most attention to it over the last 4 years than I have in my life. But I agree, you can't depend on any, president to come and help you specifically. There's certain policies and things that might make your life a little better or worse, but for the most part, you have to take your own responsibility and do the things that are going to improve your life, for yourself.
Yeah. And being informed and voting is good. I mean, I think you should also be informed about who you're voting for, whatever. But yeah, above and beyond that, it's what kind of focusing on what you have control on is kind of been my mantra. But speaking of which, we both had a pretty hard week, or we've had we talked a little bit previous about, how we both have had a lot of things happen that maybe one of them wouldn't have really, gotten us down, but we've had a few things stack upon each other. And I think it could be kind of an interesting conversation about kind of how you deal with it and how you get through those times and what keeps you going.
I would really like to hear this from you too, James, because then I can tell you what it's been like for me as his wife this week. He's gone through a really hard
I might need to leave
with it. So I'd like to hear how you both have kind of weathered that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's a good question. I think, we were talking before we started recording about some of the things that have come up in some transactions that I've had to deal with that are out of my control, things that, if I drop the ball on something, I can say, hey, I screwed up, let me fix this. But when someone else drops the ball, you can yell at them and you can do this, but ultimately it's just about fixing the problem, finding the solution, from the mental side of things, I don't know. I've found that through the years, I've gotten a little bit better at handling the stress of this business than maybe I did initially over the first 5 years, 6 years. But I would consider myself like an amiable personality. So I tend to really take things to heart and think that everyone hates me, if something goes wrong. And I think a lot just has to do with the personality type that you are too. Cause I've had colleagues that I've kind of, our business has been on the same trajectories and we both kind of got started at the same time. And he's a little more of a driver, and kind of lets things kind of, roll off his back, so to speak. And not to say he doesn't get stressed out, but I think sometimes depending on the type of personality that you are, you might stress out more than other people. And, coping with that, how do I deal with it? I think, all the normal cliche stuff that you hear, making sure that I get out and exercise and I get out and I do stuff away from the business, making sure that, just making sure I do everything I can, all the checks and balances to avoid issues, and every time I've come up across a problem throughout a transaction, I say, okay, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? And I think the more of those checks and balances and things you have in place, the less likely you're going to run into issues down the road. And, I think the other solution I think a big reason why agents stress about a deal falling through or something going sideways is because that's the only deal they have. So a big part of alleviating my stress has been just stay really busy. If you have 8, 9 escrows, one falling out, it sucks because you have to deal with it and you have to deal with the client and you have to help them. But it's a lot less of an issue than when you have one deal and it's the only deal and it's falling apart, you know?
Sure.
So staying busy solves a lot of problems, you know?
Yeah. Are you an internal processor, or do you find it's helpful to like chat with somebody about what's going on to help get your thoughts straight?
That's a good question. I don't, I would have to stop and really think about that. I do think sometimes it does help me to dump some, you know, for lack of a better word, dump some things onto people sometimes. Like I just did that with my assistant right now. I just said, what the hell's going on in the world right now to where this many people have dropped the ball in, you know, in the last 48 hours. And she already knew the problem. She already knew everything, but it felt good for me to just kind of dump it on her. And I wasn't, you know, yelling at her. I was just saying, what's going on, you know? And she just agrees because she sees it too. And I said, is it just me, you know? But yeah, I think it definitely helps to talk to people and talk it out. But I think it's important to talk to the right people too, because you can, you know, be having a bad day, give some of that bad news or bad information to someone you're hoping to get some good feedback, you know, back, and they tell you, well, hey, maybe you should quit the business, or you know, or they just make it worse sometimes.
Yeah, so they're just more negative or something. They just yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's good to talk it out, but with the right people.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I was curious what your response was to that, to Mattias too.
I was like, she's teeing it up because she's like, yeah, he's an external processor.
Well, yes, we can say that for sure. You are. I can give my own perspective on that too.
Well, it's interesting that for me it can be hard for us. So you have kids, right?
Yes, sir.
What ages are they?
So I have a 13, well, soon to be 13-year-old, and then I have a 20-year-old.
Okay. Yeah, ours are young. And so for me, like, it's can be extra hard when I'm needing to process something and we are like, you know, have no time to talk to each other than like when dinner's out and it's like the 3 little kids are screaming or interrupting or demanding time and stuff, which, you know, can't fault them for needing attention and everything like that too. But it's just, you know, when I'm needing to like de-stress, talk about these things, whatever, there's no space for it. It just kind of makes an extra layer of difficulty. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You got to have someone that you can talk to, you know, bounce ideas off of, vent to, you know, all the above, strategize with.
I've got a couple, you know, friends in the business. I think that's also helpful. I think if you're not in the business, it's hard to really get what's happening. And so that, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, you do, but like, I couldn't talk to other people as much about it. And so anyway, like, I think it's good to have that person that will uplift you too. Like, you know, that will like, you know, talk you through it. And, you know, there was one particular time I can remember that I was really down. I think this was like the first time I got really busy early in my career. And I just had like a slew of like problems. And I was just like down, and my buddy just gave this big pep talk. He's like, hey, if you're not having problems, you're not busy, man. Come on.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's go.
And that's a good type of pep talk, right? You know, that you want to hear, you know, from people that you can trust and that, you know, have been through it as well.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So with that, how did you choose your team? I know you had mentioned you have a small team. How did you put that together?
Well, you know, how can I put this? As I mentioned, I've been in real estate for 11 years, and, you know, it was very in vogue the first probably 5 or 6 years, at least where I was, but it felt like the entire industry to have a big team, and that having a big team would lead to more transactions, which would lead to more money. And, you know, so I'm giving you a long roundabout answer to your question, so I apologize.
Sitting here at the edge of my seat.
So, but thankfully, very early on was mentored and coached with someone who basically told me, like, look, you only need a team when you get to the point where you have so much business you can't handle it on your own. He said, don't try to build a team so that you can do a lot of transactions. Start building a team once you have reached your capacity. Because to have a team, you need leads to give the team, you need admin, you need, you're going to have to spend money on marketing to feed the team. And, ultimately, you're probably going to make more money if you just did less transactions on your own. So I took that advice very early. And I only really started to grow a team once I reached the amount of transactions where it's just like, okay, I can't physically or mentally handle anymore. I'm making a lot of money, but now I've kind of reached this capping point where customer service is starting to lack a little, just because, again, I can only do so much. So
right.
I kind of chose my team based more out of necessity than like a want to grow this big team. So I don't have a big team. I only have 2 agents. The current agents that I have, they both reached out to me and said, hey, I'm looking to be on a team, and it looks like, you do a lot of deals. I had 2 other team members that kind of just ran their course, as sometimes team members do. Like, they build up, and then they end up doing so many transactions that they want to go do their own thing, which is totally fine. So yeah, to answer your question, I really just picked these team members because they reached out to me and kind of fit the description of someone I thought, okay, I can help them grow. They can help me, buy back some of my time. They're trustworthy. They are, somewhat of a go-getter, so that's kind of how that evolved.
Yeah, that's cool. I wanted to ask you, let me see if I can phrase this the way I want to. So I'm pulling this information because I read like 34 reviews people had written about you. and there were some like pretty significant themes that pulled out of those reviews. And I'm really curious about them because one of the big ones was multiple people described feeling protected in the transaction with working with you. And they felt like you were very responsive and very professional and on top of it. And, but that word feeling protected, I was really curious about because, I think that's such an important thing for people, especially when they're moving in from outside of the area, to feel like somebody is looking out for their best interest, that they can trust them and that they can feel like safe and secure in the transactional process, which like as a therapist, I operate out of like an attachment lens. So I'm drawing a little bit of a bridge here, but I just thought that was really interesting because that's like, as parents, that's what we try and do for our kids is help them feel protected so they can make a change and a jump and try new things without feeling too much anxiety. And it sounds like from what these people have written about you is that's what you do for them. And have you heard that? Have you picked up on that?
I have here and there, and that's a very thoughtful thing. I don't think anyone I've done quite a few of the podcasts. I don't think anyone's gone through and read the reviews. So I can appreciate that a lot. And, I think where that might come from is most of the time, not always, but a lot of the time in real estate, it seems like the agent is mainly concerned about getting paid, and while I can understand and appreciate that because this is how we make a living and feed our families, the client really can tell if that's the agent's main objective throughout the transaction, as opposed to the agent's main objection being protecting them, making sure that, they're aware of where they're at in the process, and then ultimately helping them get to the finish line. And, I think, again, going back to making sure you have enough transactions to where you as an agent don't feel like I need this paycheck, and I think Sometimes people might say, well, I kind of want to work with an agent that maybe doesn't do a whole ton of business because I want their main focus to be on me and this and that. And, that's somewhat understandable. But if you're working with an agent that does a lot of business, that means they probably aren't desperate for a paycheck. And I've been lucky enough, or whatever you want to call it, I've worked hard enough to be busy most of the time. And so I don't ever feel like I have to get this done because I need to get paid, because I know I'm going to get paid. I've got plenty of transactions going on, most of them, knock on wood, are going to go through. I don't need to push this one through to get paid, so I think that really comes throughout the transaction. And I've told clients, hey, I don't think you should move forward on this deal. Or, I've sat with clients at a listing appointment, and if I really don't feel like it's in their best interest for them to sell the property, I might tell them that, or I will tell them that. And then ultimately it's up to them. So I think just being able to convey to the client that, hey, I'm okay if you don't feel comfortable moving forward with this for X, Y, and Z reason. Now, if it's just maybe a cold feet or something and you can help work through it, or there's a hurdle that we can all get through together and everyone's going to be happy at the end, then yeah, obviously it's our job to move it forward. But if it's a bad deal, it's a bad home, it's a bad whatever, it's our fiduciary duty to tell them, hey, let's try something else. Let's try a different property or whatever. So I think that probably comes through, and maybe why people have said, hey, I feel protected, or, whatever the case may be. And, it makes me happy to hear that for sure.
Yeah. I've been thinking about, you said it a couple of times, and I completely agree with you. There is a luxury of being busy enough to not really be stressed about the next paycheck or whatever, or that deal going through. And I think that one thing that somebody who may not be in that position yet could do is to really focus in on the processes that go through, like, to find new prospects, to manage what you do have properly, and to really focus on those things and not what paychecks might be coming. And I never really had I think I've seen some software that would have like the deal flow kind of thing, where you can kind of see what commission is coming down the line, that kind of thing. I usually have to enter in the commission to my brokerage, that kind of stuff. So I am aware of it, but it's not something that I really spend much time thinking about. I can't wait till this closes next week because I'm going to buy this or whatever. I just don't really try to think about that at all. And I think if you aren't in that luxury position, the more you can just focus on doing the right things, doing the processes that will get you the business that you don't have to worry about, the commission checks anymore. The better off you'll be. Fake it till you make it, kind of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had, going back to the mentor coach that I had early in my career, his advice was start every day at zero. So that would mean zero money in your bank account, zero escrows, zero commission checks coming down the pipeline, and zero leads in your database. That's the mentality he said you need to start with every day in this business. And it's true, because I've found, and what creeps into new agents sometimes, but I think even seasoned agents, is two things that really railroad people is complacency. If you've done really well and you've got some money in the bank and you kind of built this database and clients just kind of call you, and you get complacent, right? Because you're just like, hey, I'm good, right? And then there's apathy. You just kind of get apathetic towards the business because it's stressful and it's it's a grind, and I've always got to find new clients. And I think both of those things, one or the other, can creep in, or sometimes both. You can have a lot of money in the bank and have closed a lot of deals over the last 5-6 years, and you're doing good, and maybe you also are apathetic towards the industry a little bit. And I think that's where you can kind of you can be on this good trajectory, but if one of those things creeps in, or both of them, you'll start to level off or even sink back down. And I think that's a dangerous place to be at with your business. And I found myself at that. I've if I'm being honest, I've had to take a look at myself over the last 3 months and just say, okay, where are we at here, and what are we doing, and how are we going to grow? Because right now, we're kind of coasting a little bit, and I'm happy to be in a position where I can coast, but what's next? How can we go to the next level? And I have to ask myself that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to say that I've heard people describe it as your business is either growing or it's dying. Mm-hmm. And I think that wasn't necessarily specific to real estate, but I think it's true. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people out there right now that are seeking some kind of solution to that feeling. I think there's a lot of people that, it could be the lawsuit, it could be the shift of the market. It could be a lot of those things, but I think there's people switching brokerages, people that are starting new brokerages. There's a lot of transition happening and seeking, I think, a way to maybe reinvent themselves or to maybe be better here. I don't know. So it can be a struggle. I mean, I think it can really be a struggle to keep that mentality positive, to really focus on the basics and do what works, right?
Okay, so how do you both stay motivated? Essentially, you kind of have to keep yourself with a little bit of fire under you the whole time, and it can be a really isolating business if you don't have a team or if you don't have a super supportive brokerage behind you or community. So how do you guys stay motivated then?
Well, I don't know if it was a Tony Robbins thing or what, but I think that's where I heard it, where, humans are motivated by either pleasure or pain. So, depending on the type of person that you are, you're either going to be motivated by the pleasure of making a lot of money and being able to buy the things you want. And, that's what really keeps you going. Or you're going to be motivated by the pain of looking at your bank account and knowing if I don't close another deal in the next 3 months, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, So, but going back to the kind of complacency thing, for me, staying motivated, since I have done pretty well, is just constantly raising the bar on my goals. Because, if your goal is to sell a home a month, once you reach that, if you don't have a goal to now go to the next, 2 a month, you're probably going to stay wherever you kind of have your goals. Right. So, I think if you've done well, you have to just keep kind of upping the bar, so to speak, to keep motivating yourself. You look at someone like, a Tom Brady or whatever, they win one Super Bowl. Most quarterbacks never even get to that point. And sometimes they might say, hey, that's good enough. But then you've got these ultra competitors that say, I need another one. I need another one. I need another one. And so, I don't know if there's some sort of trick on how to stay motivated. Everyone's different, but I think at least having your clear, concise goals of knowing exactly what you want to accomplish should at least be a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say too that I think some people don't necessarily want to continue to grow, and I think that at a certain point, and that's fine. I think there's people that kind of have like a threshold of what they want to sell a year, and they're good with it, and they have other things that they are very motivated by, that they enjoy outside of the business. Mm-hmm. I think that's fine too. And I think it really boils down to some intentionality of how you want to live your life, what you want out of life, and setting goals to, if you have a North Star, if you have like this guiding thing that takes you to, that guides everything you do, that's going to help you be motivated. So if like you want to, I don't know, you want to buy a bigger house in 3 years or something like that, you can kind of keep that in the forefront, and that can motivate you if you break it down to I need to sell this many houses a year, this many houses a month, which means I need to, contact my sphere. I need to do 10 contacts a day or whatever, that can also kind of help keep you going. I think it's not something I necessarily, that's the right answer. Maybe it's not something I've always been perfect at. For me, I've definitely also like gotten excited about like new systems and things like that I can play with and experiment with. And that's kind of kept me going. Yeah. So
yeah, that seems such like a very natural thing. You kind of get tired of the everyday things that you've done the same way over and over, and you need something different, which is kind of fun in it probably too, is finding a different way to market or a different strategy, how to reach people, or a different way to pitch to sellers.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a couple things there that I noticed that were good points. I'll start with kind of what you had just said, that coming up with new ways to do things can sometimes be exciting. I remember initially when I first got into the business, for the most part, all of my business was coming from door knocking and cold calling. And that was like a grind, and it worked, and it worked well. But, a couple years in, maybe 4 years or so, I really started kind of getting into the social media, heavily and marketing a lot on there. And that was kind of fun. And it didn't feel like this grind it was a way to kind of, I was doing all the stuff that a lot of agents do now, but I was doing it a while ago, like, local interviews with, business owners and restaurants and all that stuff that's really become popular over the last couple of years. I was doing that a long time ago, and it was fun. And it was a way to talk to people outside of just cold calling and stuff. So I agree with you 100%. If you can interject something into your business that's going to help your business grow, but also is a lot of fun for you, I think that's important, and that it'll give you some more energy. And then you had mentioned, sometimes agents or just people in general that are maybe business owners will reach a level in their business where they say, I'm okay where I'm at. And I think that's fine as well. Just because you hit 50 deals doesn't mean now you have to do 100 if that's not really what you personally want in your life, I think if you're the type of person that's motivated by up in the bar all the time, then that will help you. But if maybe your motivation is finding a way to get your time back, then maybe you are going to be motivated by, hey, I need to do a certain amount of deals each year where I can buy.
Well, let's pause this here. And we're back after a brief technical difficulty. Sorry about that.
You're good. So, I think if you're motivated by trying to get your time back, maybe your motivation is going to be doing enough deals per year to where you can buy one rental property per year, right? And then you say, hey, once I reach X amount of, passive income, then I'm going to scale back on my real estate business, and maybe I'm going to focus on doing something else. So, to your point earlier, everyone's kind of motivated by different things. And I don't necessarily think, everyone has to have the same goals, because everyone is different. I've even, we talked about the issues and the stresses of this business. And I definitely think you got to be a little bit crazy to be in a business where, or be an entrepreneur, because 100% of your income is based off of what you do and your production and how hard you work, as opposed to, showing up to a 9-to-5 and, okay, every week I'm going to make this much money, and it's kind of a little more comfortable and quote unquote safe. So I do think you have to be a little bit of a crazy person to just be okay with not knowing where the next checks are coming from, and I tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with having a 9-to-5 and just kind of living, for lack of a better word, a mediocre kind of life. I don't mean that as like a negative, but just kind of an average, maybe average is a better word. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I think it works better for a lot of people than trying to be an entrepreneur. But the only caveat I always say is you have to be happy with it, or have to be
Yeah.
okay with the fact that, hey, this is just like, I'm not going to be a millionaire. I'm not going to, own a bunch of properties, or I'm not going to drive a super nice car, but I'm happy. And if that's okay and you're happy with that, then I think that that's better than the entrepreneur that has millions of dollars and is miserable, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so,
totally. Yeah, it's all about getting out of life what you want. And for me, like the big thing that is motivating for me is like just kind of freedom. Like, I mean, we started this podcast and it would have been next to impossible with a 9-to-5, right? I mean, we both, she's self-employed, she has her own practice. And so we are able to carve out time to do this, and it's a lot of fun. But it would just time-wise, and it would just not really make sense otherwise. So it's just cool to be able to do kind of what you want with your time, and that's one of the big things for me anyway.
That's true. I'm just going to throw out or add in
Mm-hmm.
the perspective of like the partner too, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if we get to talk about that as much, but because as you are kind of trying to figure out where you want your business to be, and as it changes and it ebbs and flows and grows, and sometimes are more stressful than others, you and I think have become really good at this, and it's taken us a while to get there, but I feel like we do a good job of, like I say, if business is really busy, or if you have a lot on your plate, like this week would probably be a good example, then I compensate for that by pulling more weight with like the kids or with everything else in life, or anything that's being scheduled, and you kind of jump in where you can. But I think it takes a lot of probably communication and awareness, just as a family as a whole, to figure out how much you're able to be a part of the family piece of it when work is really busy, and then when things are feeling more manageable, and then we recalibrate again. But that seems to be like a living, breathing organism that is always changing.
That's very true.
And so it can be really stressful and really hard if you're not communicating about it well, which we've also done in the past. But I feel like we've done a lot of work on that too, where I think it works much, much better now.
Well, and to that point, I think when you're dealing with a lot, having to communicate a lot to figure out problems, to, get, just communicating for the day-to-day stuff, it can be hard. And then you throw in noisy kids on top of it. It's just like, you know what? I want you to read my mind. Not now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, when you have kids and a spouse. I've been married for 14 years, and I have kids that, like I said, I don't know if this is pre-recording or post, but I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And so, you do the math there. I had a kid very young with my previous wife, and then, so just a lot of family dynamics, right? And then you add in the stresses of business on top of it all, and thankfully my wife is awesome and has been there to kind of help navigate through the whole thing. And, when we first got married, I wasn't even in real estate. I was doing auto glass, and I wasn't really making much money, and I didn't have a plan, necessarily, other than living paycheck to paycheck. And, thankfully she was very, supportive and on board. I don't think she fully grasped. I mean, we were young, and she was even a little younger than I was. And, you kind of just, I'm almost 40 now. And when you look back at like your 25-year-old self, I will speak for myself. I was kind of just an idiot, so, and maybe not a full-on idiot, but definitely just, you don't know much. You don't know what the economy is or what, how it works. And I mean, I don't fully grasp it now, but you're kind of just going to work, coming home, and kind of partying on the weekend, and that's about it. And to my wife's credit, when I said, hey, I'm going to get into real estate, I'm going to do this. And then I was working 7 days a week, probably for a year straight. It felt like, because I would go to work at my auto glass job, and then I would come home, take a shower, put on a suit, and I would go door knock, for an hour, 2 hours a day. And it was like that for a while, and then when I did finally started getting clients and stuff, that occupied a lot of my spare time. And, eventually it got to the point where I was able to transition into real estate full time, but the entire process, she had to kind of be on board with it, and be okay with it, and kind of pick up where I couldn't, be there to maybe do some of the things that she might have needed my help with at the time. And but she kind of saw the vision, I think, or at least, when you get your first couple commission checks, I think the spouse can at least see there was some fruits of the labor and say, okay, I see kind of where this could go. And so I got to give her a lot of credit for, being on board with it.
Yeah, that's huge. And I imagine, if it had gone a different way, that would have been exponential amount of stress for you trying to get it started, and also feeling like you need to perform and bring home some money too for home.
Yeah, I think you're right. If it didn't work out, it would have been a lot of time and effort that maybe would have felt wasted. But, I think I just wouldn't let it not work, I guess.
Exactly.
I just, it wasn't an option. I knew that what I was doing at the time wasn't going to get me the life that I really wanted for myself or for my family. And, I think sometimes people don't understand how much true effort and work it's going to take to make it in real estate, and I think that's why there's such a high failure rate. And, I was lucky. I found podcasts and things like that very early on. I think when I started studying for my test and all that, I was, like I said, doing autoglass, but podcasts were kind of this new thing. And this was 2010 probably. And there was like a handful, I'd say like 2 or 3 real estate podcasts that I would listen to at the time. And I learned a lot through those podcasts of what I needed to do. Now, granted, it was like information overload, but I was able to kind of handpick a couple things and say, okay, I'm going to do this and this, because they were interviewing top producers, just like kind of what you guys are doing. And I learned a lot just listening to those while I was doing my other job. And then I would implement what I learned, at night and on the weekends. And, it all kind of worked out eventually. And I got a coach too, which was a big step that I was afraid to take, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one for a lot of people. I haven't done one. I've had some awesome mentors along the way. But I think that's definitely something that I would never say is a bad idea. I mean, I think it sounds like if you need to get yourself into like a path of being intentional and doing the right thing and having accountability, that's huge. I'm currently in a mastermind, which probably serves as a similar type of role where we have accountability, et cetera, that we share every week. But so I think that's a huge way of getting started. Along the way, when you were getting started, were there any books that were really huge to you getting started, or are there any current books that you think are really good that you would suggest people to read? It doesn't have to be necessarily real estate related, but anything that come to mind?
Yeah, there's been several books through the years. A lot of them are the cliche or the norm, how to win friends and influence people, and those books, if you haven't read them, read them, because I think they're important, especially in a sales business. But one that I really like that I've read and listened to several times because it's super short, it's very digestible, and I think it's applicable to just anyone that wants to make some money and have a good life for themselves, not just in real estate, but, just overall, was, I think it's just called The Millionaire Booklet, I believe. And it's by Grant Cardone, and I don't think it's more than maybe 30 pages or something. It's very short, very easily digestible, but that's what I think is so, I don't want to say brilliant, but what is really good about the book is that it's short, it's to the point, it's simple. And I think it really can help shift your mindset for people that maybe have a negative mindset about money or people with money. Or, I know when I was growing up, my parents were like, middle class. They didn't have like a ton of money, but they weren't like dirt poor. We maybe would go on vacation every few years type of thing. And but the mindset with money, it was always kind of like, rich people that have a lot of money, they either got there from like inheriting it, or they got there by kind of screwing people over. There was no real clear path to getting rich that wasn't either just luck or, something nefarious that you were kind of screwing people. So
Right.
I always had it in my mind that like, oh, well, then I'm probably not going to get there because I'm not going to get money from anyone in my family, and I'm not going to go out and screw people over. But, once I realized that, oh no, if you just provide a service that a lot of people need and you can do it for a lot of people at a high level, you can make a lot of money. So this book, I think, would be something that if you haven't had a chance to read it, or at least just listen to it on audio, and I think you can get a free version of it. It's pretty great.
Cool. No, I haven't heard of that one either. So that's great. How to Win Friends and Influence People is one that I have wanted to gift people.
Yeah, that's a great
anonymously.
Yeah.
You need this.
Yeah, I think
in your mailbox.
I think it's a good general overall book. And I think for anyone that maybe had like a rough childhood or things that they're getting over or can't get over, I think Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins is a really good book as well, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And if people wanted to reach out to you at all or follow you anywhere, what platforms are you on?
You can pretty much find me anywhere. I think primarily Instagram is probably the best place to find me. If you just search James Shelby, you'll probably find me, but it's James_Shelby if you want to really get specific. And then if you search on YouTube, you'll find me. Facebook, TikTok, I'm kind of everywhere. Threads has been my new favorite. I jump on X and kind of read news stuff, but I don't really post there. But I do like Threads. Recently, it's kind of had I know it launched and then everyone was kind of, not into it, but I think it's had a little bit of a resurgence, and it seems to be a cool place to connect. And I think it's one of those platforms right now where people should jump on it, because I think it is going to get some legs underneath of it and grow, but it's relatively simple to get engagement on it right now because they're kind of, trying to get it going. Yeah. So I think we'll see what happens.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks so much for being on. James, has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the REI Agent.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe to catch new shows every week.
Visit reiagent.com for more content.
Until next time, keep building the life you want.
All content in the show is not investment advice or mental health therapy. It is intended for entertainment